The sky is about to speak. In the ancient scroll of Joel, written over 2.5 millennia ago, a prophecy was recorded that has captivated believers and skeptics alike. The sun will turn to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. For centuries these words remained dormant, cryptic, waiting, but in 2025, something extraordinary is unfolding above our heads. Not one, not two, but 3 blood moons are appearing in a celestial sequence that astronomers say is mathematically rare and theologically significant. This is not science fiction. This is not ancient mythology. This is happening right now, and most of the world has no idea what they're witnessing. Let me take you back to March 13th, 2025. It was a Thursday evening, and across the Western Hemisphere, millions of people looked up to see something that would make even the most hardened skeptic pause. The full moon, that familiar companion of our nights, began to change. Slowly, methodically, Earth's shadow crept across its surface like an invisible hand drawing a curtain. But this was no ordinary eclipse. As the moon entered the deepest part of Earth's shadow, something remarkable happened. Instead of going dark, it transformed into a glowing orb of crimson light, a blood moon suspended in the cosmos like a celestial warning sign. The March blood moon was visible from North America, South America, Europe, Africa, and much of Asia. Over 3 billion people had the opportunity to witness this phenomenon. Scientists explain it with elegant simplicity. During a total lunar eclipse, Earth blocks direct sunlight from reaching the moon's surface, but our planet's atmosphere acts like a cosmic prism, bending and filtering the sun's rays. Blue light scatters away, the same process that makes our sky blue during the day. What remains is red light, the light of every sunrise and sunset on Earth simultaneously projected onto the lunar surface. The moon literally glows with the combined light of all the world's dawns and dusks. It's a physics lesson written across the heavens, but to the ancients, and to many today, it was something far more profound. The March eclipse occurred just 3.3 days before the moon reached apogee, its farthest point from Earth. This meant the moon appeared slightly smaller in the sky, but the totality lasted an impressive duration, giving observers ample time to contemplate what they were seeing. The umbral magnitude reached 1.18, meaning the moon plunged deep into Earth's shadow. For those who watched from the Americas, the spectacle unfolded in the late evening and early morning hours, a perfect viewing window for millions. But here's what makes 2025 different. This wasn't an isolated event. It was the opening act in a trilogy. Fast forward to September 7th, 2025. As summer fades and autumn approaches, the moon once again aligns with Earth and Sun in that ancient dance of eclipse. This time the blood moon rises over the Eastern Hemisphere. Asia, Australia, Africa, and Europe become the prime viewing locations, and this eclipse is special. With a totality lasting 82 minutes, it's one of the longest total lunar eclipses in years. Astronomers calculate that 77% of the world's population, approximately 6.2 billion people, will have the opportunity to see at least part of this eclipse. It's a global event on a scale rarely witnessed. The September moon reaches totality during the harvest moon, the full moon closest to the autumn equinox. For agricultural societies throughout history, this moon has held special significance, providing light for farmers bringing in their crops. But on this night, the harvest moon becomes a blood moon, and the symbolism is not lost on those who remember the prophecies. The moon enters Earth's umbral shadow at a point where 36% of its diameter crosses the shadow's axis, creating what astronomers call a deep eclipse. The moon turns a distinctly reddish color, darker and more dramatic than typical lunar eclipses. It occurs just 2.7 days before perigee, when the moon is closest to Earth, making it appear slightly larger than average. a micro-supermoon blood moon hybrid that adds visual drama to the spectacle. But the sequence isn't complete. While 2025 gives us two total lunar eclipses, both blood moons visible to billions, the pattern extends into 2026. On March 3rd, 2026, a third total lunar eclipse completes what astronomers are calling an almost tetrad. This final blood moon will be visible from Eastern Europe, Asia, Australia, North America, and South America. It's the last total lunar eclipse until December 31st, 2028, making this sequence particularly notable. 3 blood moons across 13 months. Not quite the biblical tetrad that captivated attention in 2014 and 2015, but significant nonetheless. And this is where the prophecy of Joel enters the conversation. The book of Joel, nestled in the Old Testament between Hosea and Amos, is one of the more enigmatic prophetic books. Scholars debate its exact dating, with estimates ranging from the 9th century BCE to the post-exilic period around 400 BCE. But its message has remained consistent and powerful. Joel speaks of cosmic signs preceding the day of the Lord, a theological concept representing divine judgment and intervention in human history. Chapter 2, verse 31 reads, "I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord." This prophecy was so significant that the Apostle Peter quoted it verbatim on the day of Pentecost, as recorded in the book of Acts. Some scholars argue Peter was saying the prophecy was fulfilled in that moment with the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Others contend Peter was drawing a parallel, suggesting that what happened at Pentecost was a foretaste of something yet to come. The prophecy appears again in the book of Revelation, where John describes the opening of the 6th seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat hair, the whole moon turned blood red, and the stars in the sky fell to earth. These apocalyptic visions have fueled millennia of speculation about celestial signs and their meaning. Now, before we dive deeper, we need to address the elephant in the room. The blood moon prophecy movement, particularly the tetrad theory popularized by Christian pastors John Hagee and Mark Biltz in the early 2010s, received significant attention and significant criticism. They pointed to the 2014-2015 tetrad, 4 total lunar eclipses occurring on Jewish feast days, Passover and Sukkot, as potential fulfillment of Joel's prophecy. Hagee's book, 4 Blood Moons, became a bestseller. But when the predicted end times events didn't materialize, many dismissed the entire concept as another failed doomsday prediction. Critics were quick to point out the mathematical realities. The Jewish calendar is lunar-based, so it's not statistically unusual for eclipses to coincide with Jewish holidays. Since Passover always occurs on a full moon, and lunar eclipses can only happen during full moons, the overlap is inevitable given enough time. Between the 1st century CE and 2051 CE, there have been 62 tetrads, though only 8 coincided with both Passover and Sukkot. Furthermore, 3 of the 4 eclipses in the 2014-2015 tetrad weren't even visible from Israel, which seemed to undermine any claim of special prophetic significance to the Jewish people. So why should we pay attention to 2025? Because this time it's different in ways that even skeptics find intriguing. First, let's consider the geopolitical context. The world in 2025 is experiencing unprecedented upheaval in the Middle East. The events following October 7th, 2023, when Hamas launched a devastating attack on Israel, triggered a cascade of regional instability. Israel's subsequent operations in Gaza, the degradation of Hezbollah's capabilities in Lebanon, the dramatic regime change in Syria, and the ongoing existential confrontation with Iran over its nuclear program, all of these create a backdrop that resonates with the ancient prophecies About Israel and the nations. The March blood moon occurred during Purim, the Jewish festival celebrating Queen Esther's deliverance of the Jewish people from genocide in ancient Persia. The timing is symbolically loaded. Here we have a blood moon appearing during a festival about survival and divine intervention, occurring in a year when Israel faces its most complex security environment in decades. Coincidence? Perhaps. But it's the kind of coincidence that makes people pause and wonder. The September blood moon aligns with no particular Jewish holiday, which actually makes it more interesting from a prophecy perspective. If these signs are meant to be warnings or signals, they're not following the expected pattern. They're not checking all the traditional boxes that previous blood moon theorists insisted were necessary. This unpredictability, this breaking of the assumed pattern, gives 2025's blood moons a different character. They're not fitting neatly into anyone's predetermined prophetic timeline, which paradoxically makes them more compelling to those who believe genuine divine signs wouldn't necessarily conform to human expectations. Now let's talk about what scientists are saying, because the astronomical community has observations that go beyond simple eclipse mechanics. The March and September eclipses of 2025 are both deep eclipses, meaning the moon passes through the center of Earth's umbral shadow rather than skirting its edge. This produces a darker, more dramatic coloration. The specific hue of a blood moon depends on atmospheric conditions at the time. Volcanic eruptions, wildfires, dust storms, all can affect how red the moon appears. In recent years, increased wildfires and unusual atmospheric conditions have occasionally produced what some astronomers call dark blood moons, where the color shifts from typical orange-red to a deeper brownish-red reminiscent of dried blood. There's fascinating research by astronomer Danny Faulkner suggesting that the ancient prophecies might be referring specifically to these darker, less common lunar eclipses. In ancient times, unusually dark lunar eclipses were viewed as evil omens. They occurred infrequently enough to be considered genuine portents rather than routine celestial events. Faulkner notes that dark eclipses often did correlate with subsequent famines, societal unrest, and political upheaval, likely because the same atmospheric conditions that darkened the moon, volcanic ash, widespread fires, also affected agriculture and climate. To an ancient audience familiar with sacrificial blood and its dried, darkened appearance, such a lunar eclipse would have been profoundly unsettling. A sky stained with the color of death and judgment. Whether the 2025 eclipses will be dark depends on factors we can't fully predict. If major volcanic activity occurs before either eclipse, or if significant wildfires create atmospheric particulates, we could see blood moons that are darker and more dramatic than typical lunar eclipses. This adds an element of the unknown to the equation. We know the eclipses are coming. The mathematics is certain, but we don't know exactly what they'll look like, and that final appearance might be the detail that determines whether people see them as routine, celestial mechanics or as something more. The visibility patterns are also noteworthy. The March eclipse favors the Western Hemisphere, particularly the Americas. The September eclipse favors the Eastern Hemisphere, particularly Asia and Australia. Between them, nearly the entire populated world gets a clear viewing opportunity for at least one of these blood moons. In an age of global communication, this means billions of people will see, photograph, and discuss these events in real time. The psychological and cultural impact of that shared experience shouldn't be underestimated. Throughout human history, celestial events visible to entire populations have shaped cultures, triggered religious movements, and altered the course of history. The difference now is the speed and scale of information sharing. A blood moon witnessed in Beijing can be discussed in real time by someone in Buenos Aires. The global consciousness around these events is unprecedented. There's also the question of how these signs fit into larger prophetic frameworks. Christians who study end times prophecy often point to Matthew chapter 24, where Jesus describes signs preceding his return. There will be signs in sun and moon and stars, and on the earth distress of nations in perplexity. People will faint with fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world. Whether you believe in prophetic fulfillment or not, it's undeniable that we live in an age of global anxiety. Climate change, nuclear proliferation, pandemic threats, artificial intelligence risks, economic instability, the list of existential concerns is long and growing. Blood moons appearing in such a context take on psychological weight, regardless of their objective astronomical meaning. Jewish perspectives on these signs vary widely. Traditional rabbinic literature discusses eclipses as potential signs, but with nuance. The Talmud suggests that lunar eclipses can be warnings to Israel, while solar eclipses might be warnings to the nations. However, these are not viewed as inevitable prophecies, but as calls to repentance and spiritual introspection. Modern Orthodox Jews tend to view blood moon speculation with skepticism, particularly when it comes from Christian prophetic movements. The failed predictions of 2015 damaged credibility. But privately, many religious Jews acknowledge feeling a sense of weight, a recognition that living in Israel during a time of blood moons and regional upheaval creates an atmosphere where the ancient texts feel less ancient and more immediate. Islamic tradition also has eschatological signs involving the sun and moon, though they differ from Judeo-Christian prophecies. Some Muslim scholars have noted the 2025 eclipses as potentially significant, particularly given the turmoil in predominantly Muslim regions of the Middle East. The universality of concern about celestial signs crosses religious boundaries, suggesting something deeply human in our response to these phenomena. Skeptics, and there are many, argue that humans are pattern-seeking creatures prone to confirmation bias. We remember the hits and forget the misses. Dozens of predicted doomsdays have come and gone, each accompanied by confident interpretation of signs. The sun has been darkened by eclipses countless times. The moon has turned blood red in predictable cycles for billions of years. Assigning special significance to any particular occurrence says more about human psychology than divine intention. They're not wrong. History is littered with failed prophetic predictions. The challenge for anyone taking these signs seriously is to hold conviction without certainty, to recognize meaning without claiming to know the exact timeline or mechanism of fulfillment. So what should we make of the 3 blood moons spanning 2025 and early 2026? Let me offer several perspectives, and you can decide which resonates with you. From a purely astronomical standpoint, these are spectacular natural phenomena worth observing regardless of any prophetic significance. Total lunar eclipses are beautiful, accessible celestial events that require no special equipment to view safely. The fact that billions of people can look up and see the same thing at roughly the same time is itself remarkable in our fragmented world. From a theological standpoint, whether these are the specific blood moons referenced in Joel's prophecy or not, they serve as reminders of the prophetic tradition itself. Ancient texts warned that cosmic signs would precede times of judgment and transformation. We live in a time when transformation is occurring at breakneck speed. Technological, environmental, political, social, the old order is clearly giving way to something new. Whether that's apocalyptic in the biblical sense or simply the normal churn of history, the blood moons provide a moment to pause and consider larger questions about humanity's direction and destiny. From a historical standpoint, we should note that previous tetrads and significant lunar eclipses have occurred during pivotal moments. The tetrad of 1493-1494 coincided with the expulsion of Jews from Spain and Columbus's voyage, which eventually led to the Americas becoming a haven for Jewish refugees. The tetrad of 1949-1950 occurred as Israel achieved statehood after 2 millennia. The tetrad of 1967-1968 framed the Six-Day War, when Israel captured Jerusalem's Old City. These correlations don't prove causation, but they create a pattern that's hard to dismiss entirely. The 2025-2026 sequence occurs as Israel faces perhaps its most complex and dangerous security environment since its founding. Is that meaningful? Time will tell. From a practical standpoint, these blood moons are opportunities. Opportunities to look up from our screens and remember we're part of something larger. Opportunities to have conversations about meaning and purpose that transcend daily concerns. Opportunities to consider the ancient wisdom traditions that have shaped civilizations, whether or not we accept their supernatural claims. In an age of increasing atomization and isolation, a shared global experience, even one as simple as watching the moon change color, has value. Here's what we know for certain. On March 14, 2025, the moon turned blood red, visible to billions. On September 7, 2025, it will happen again, with even longer totality and even broader visibility. On March 3, 2026, the sequence completes. These are facts, verifiable by anyone with eyes and clear skies. What these facts mean, what significance they carry, what they might be telling us, those are questions each person must answer for themselves. Joel's prophecy remains as enigmatic as ever. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. Has that day come? Is it coming? What even is the day of the Lord? 2.5 millennia of theological debate haven't settled these questions, but 3 blood moons in 13 months, occurring during a period of unprecedented global tension centered on the land where these prophecies originated, that's enough to make even skeptics pay attention. So watch the sky, mark your calendar for September 7th, tell others to look up. Whether you see the hand of God, the mechanics of orbital dynamics, a cosmic coincidence, or something you can't quite name, the blood moon will be there, hanging in the darkness, glowing crimson with the light of 1,000 sunsets. And for a few hours, billions of people across the earth will be looking at the same thing, wondering the same questions, connected by a celestial event that our ancestors would have called a sign, and we call an eclipse. Maybe, just maybe, the difference between those two words is smaller than we think. The prophecy of Joel that nobody saw coming isn't that the blood moons would appear. Astronomers predicted these eclipses decades ago. It's that when they arrived, in this year, in this global moment, with this geopolitical backdrop, they would feel like something more than astronomy. They would feel like a message, and whether that message is real or imagined, whether it comes from the cosmos or our collective unconscious, it's being heard by billions. The sky is speaking. The question is, are we listening? And if we are, what are we hearing?